The void was quiet, but only for a moment. Across light years of empty space, alien sensors hummed, scanning a lone human battleship drifting through a starless sector. They expected weakness, a vessel that could be overwhelmed with minimal effort. Their algorithms predicted victory. Their confidence was absolute, but the human ship was more than metal and plasma. It was a testament to ingenuity honed over centuries, a vessel designed not merely for war, but for inevitability. Systems blinked with silent efficiency. Shields rippled in patterns unreadable by alien instruments. Engines adjusted imperceptibly, preparing for maneuvers no observer could anticipate. The scan concluded, and what the aliens saw was not just a battleship, it was a promise. A warning encoded in steel and intelligence. Panic rippled across alien command decks. Calculations failed. Probabilities collapsed. The battleship, alone yet supremely capable, was a force that could not be ignored. They realized too late that humanity had mastered the art of deterrence, of precision, of strategy woven seamlessly with moral clarity. Every system, every crude station, every algorithm on that ship acted with one purpose: to ensure survival, enforce consequence, and uphold the principle that cruelty and arrogance invite inevitable correction. The human vessel moved, and the cosmos shifted in response. Alien fleets, previously confident, found themselves outmaneuvered before a single weapon fired. Communication networks disrupted, propulsion systems scrambled, weapons rendered inert. The battleship acted with exacting judgment, neutralizing threats while preserving life wherever possible. The aliens had believed in force, humanity relied on foresight and principle. As the conflict unfolded, the galaxy watched silently. Planets under threat were shielded. Civilians evacuated or protected. Infrastructure remained intact, restored by unseen drones and automated systems. Humanity's defiance was not brute strength, but calculated inevitability. Every strike was deliberate, every move measured. The battleship, though solitary, became the pivot upon which fate turned, the fulcrum that reminded the universe that intelligence tempered with ethics is unstoppable. Alien commanders recalculated endlessly, trying to predict a species that anticipated aggression, preserved innocence, and enforced justice without fury or spectacle. Every attempt to dominate failed before it began. The battleship was more than a weapon, it was a lesson. It taught the galaxy that arrogance underestimates foresight, that cruelty underestimates principle, and that intelligence combined with moral clarity can enforce order across light years. As hours passed, fleets that had once believed themselves invincible drifted powerless, their pride shattered. Humanity did not revel in their defeat. The battleship withdrew silently, leaving systems safe, survivors intact. And empires forever cautious. The aliens had scanned, assessed, and learned a truth they could not erase. To challenge humanity is to invite the inevitability of reckoning. The void returned to quiet, but the echo of certainty remained. Across the galaxy, civilizations adjusted strategies, recalibrated alliances, and learned that power measured without principle is fragile, and that one human battleship, alone yet supremely capable, was enough to shift the course of history. The aftermath of that single scan rippled through the stars like a shockwave. Civilizations that had once dismissed humanity as insignificant reconsidered every assumption. Fleets paused before engaging, expansionist plans were recalculated. And diplomats approached treaties with a cautious respect previously unknown. The universe had learned that a species capable of combining intelligence, strategy, and principle could turn even a solitary vessel into a force of inevitability. The human battleship did not linger for glory. It moved silently, protecting vulnerable systems and stabilizing colonies that had once teetered on the brink of collapse. Automated drones repaired infrastructure, shields safeguarded populations, and communication networks restored order. Humanity's intervention was measured, precise, and deliberate, a quiet demonstration that foresight and moral clarity could be as devastating as any weapon. Alien commanders struggled to comprehend what had occurred. Their fleets, previously confident in calculations and predictions, found their assumptions shattered. Systems failed, strategies collapsed, and morale faltered. Humanity had proven that power alone is hollow without intelligence and principle guiding its use. One vessel had rewritten the rules of engagement across entire star systems. Even distant observers adjusted their expectations. The hidden strength of humanity, its ability to enforce justice while preserving life, became a variable in every calculation. No longer could cruelty or aggression proceed unchecked. The galaxy learned that reckoning could arrive silently, decisively, and inevitably, and that even the most confident empires were vulnerable to a species that mastered both ethics and strategy. The battleship, though unseen for much of its journey, left a permanent mark on history. Colonies flourished under subtle guidance, survivors carried knowledge of intervention, and the universe began to understand that intelligence tempered with principle is a force beyond any conventional fleet. Humanity's quiet, calculated defiance had ensured that injustice would no longer go unchallenged. The galaxy began to feel the weight of humanity's presence in ways subtle yet undeniable. Alien fleets, once brimming with confidence, now advanced cautiously. Every deployment, every maneuver, every tactical calculation was shadowed by the knowledge that a single human battleship, or perhaps an entire hidden fleet, could intervene with precision, foresight, and moral clarity. What the aliens had assumed to be a solitary vessel was, in fact, a symbol of inevitability, a demonstration that intelligence paired with principle could enforce consequences across light years. Humanity moved with deliberate care. Threatened systems were shielded, colonies stabilized, and populations preserved. Automated repair drones reconstructed devastated habitats, communication networks were restored, and supply lines secured without a trace of recklessness. Every action was measured, each strike intentional, each deployment designed to minimize loss while maximizing strategic impact. Humanity's defiance was not reckless, it was surgical, guided by ethics as much as tactical expertise. Alien commanders panicked quietly, simulations failing in ways they could not predict. Weapon systems misfired, engines stalled, and fleets became paralyzed under the unseen influence of human foresight. One battleship had become an instrument of inevitability, reshaping entire sectors without firing salvo after salvo. The galaxy watched in awe as intelligence, principle, and restraint coalesced into a force that no calculation could fully anticipate. Even distant observers, unconnected to the immediate theater, recalibrated their assumptions. Civilizations that had relied on fear, coercion, and overwhelming force began to reassess the rules of engagement. Aggression could no longer be considered safe. Expansionist ambitions were tempered by the silent threat of human intervention. Diplomats revised treaties, militaries adjusted doctrines, and scholars chronicled the emergence of a species whose power was measured as much in moral clarity as in firepower. The human battleship continued its mission, protecting lives, neutralizing threats, and restoring balance. Colonies once left to fend for themselves now flourished, carrying forward a legacy of resilience and foresight. Survivors understood that the ship's presence was more than defense, it was a lesson etched across the stars. Intelligence applied with ethics is unstoppable, and principle enforced with precision can reshape the fate of civilizations. By the time the battleship withdrew from each system, the galaxy had been transformed. Alien fleets had learned humility, colonies had been saved, and the universe had witnessed the emergence of a force both invisible and inescapable. Humanity had arrived not to conquer, but to enforce balance, not to dominate, but to teach that foresight, intelligence, and moral clarity are the ultimate weapons in a cosmos where recklessness and cruelty once held sway. Time stretched across the void, and the consequences of humanity's intervention deepened with each passing cycle. The battleship moved like a shadow through contested sectors, invisible yet undeniable, leaving systems stabilized and populations preserved. Planets once under threat were shielded from devastation, infrastructure repaired by automated drones, and communication networks restored to full functionality. Humanity's presence was felt not through conquest, but through careful, deliberate action, an orchestration of precision and principle that left no room for cruelty to persist. Alien fleets that had once relied on intimidation and overwhelming force hesitated, recalculating strategies that had once been infallible. Expansion plans stalled, tactical doctrines were rewritten, and diplomats approached negotiations with newfound caution. Humanity had demonstrated that strength alone is hollow without intelligence, and that foresight combined with ethical clarity could neutralize threats before they became crises. One battleship, alone yet supremely capable, had become a symbol of inevitability, a reminder that arrogance invites consequences, and that cruelty cannot escape accountability. Even civilizations far from the conflict observed subtle shifts in the galaxy. Colonies rebuilt under human guidance flourished. Generations born in these systems grew up learning that survival is not merely a matter of force, but of wisdom, foresight, and ethical action. Knowledge, governance, and technology spread quietly, leaving a legacy that extended far beyond the reach of any fleet. Humanity's intervention became both shield and teacher, showing that power, when tempered by principle, could preserve life even amidst chaos. Attempts at retaliation by hostile forces were met with surgical precision. Engines were disabled mid-flight, weapons rendered inert, and command networks severed, all without unnecessary loss of life. Humanity had shown that restraint, when wielded intelligently, could be more devastating than any display of brute force. The galaxy began to understand that consequence delivered with principle leaves a legacy far stronger than destruction wrought in anger. The battleship continued its journey, protecting the vulnerable, stabilizing the unstable, and enforcing balance across light years. Its presence became a silent guarantee. Cruelty, aggression, and arrogance could no longer dictate the fates of civilizations. The universe learned that humanity moves not for glory, not for conquest, but for the preservation of life and the enforcement of principle, shaping the galaxy in ways subtle yet permanent. The galaxy had begun to change in ways that could not be undone. The singular human battleship, once underestimated, had revealed a principle far greater than brute strength. Intelligence guided by foresight and tempered with moral clarity could reshape the course of entire civilizations. Alien fleets, previously confident in their calculations and their domination, now moved with caution, hesitation shadowing every maneuver. Expansionist empires paused, strategists recalculated, and diplomats reconsidered alliances. All under the silent threat of a species whose presence could not be ignored. Humanity did not act out of pride or desire for conquest. Every movement of the battleship, every deployment of drones and shields, was precise, deliberate, and principled. Systems under threat were stabilized before destruction could arrive. Populations were evacuated or protected, infrastructure repaired, and communication networks restored. Where chaos had once ruled, order now spread, not through fear or aggression, but through intelligent intervention. Humanity's defiance was not loud, it was absolute in its inevitability, a force that corrected imbalance without excess. Alien commanders struggled to comprehend the pattern of intervention. Fleets paralyzed, weapons neutralized, and engines rendered inert, their simulations failed again and again, unable to account for a species that applied ethics as skillfully as tactics. The battleship was more than a weapon, it was a teacher, demonstrating that restraint can be as powerful as aggression, and that strategic intelligence coupled with principle can dismantle arrogance more effectively than overwhelming force. Colonies once abandoned or endangered flourished under subtle guidance. Automated drones repaired habitats, shield generators protected populations, and communication networks connected systems previously isolated. Civilizations learned resilience through quiet intervention. Generations understanding that foresight and ethical action are as vital to survival as any fleet of ships. Humanity's influence became a silent architecture upon which life and civilization could thrive, leaving an imprint that would last centuries. Even hostile remnants realized the futility of aggression. Attempts at retaliation were neutralized with surgical precision, command networks severed, and weapon systems disabled, while innocence remained untouched. Humanity had demonstrated that punishment delivered with intelligence and principle is more enduring than indiscriminate destruction, and that restraint can enforce inevitability more effectively than chaos. The broadcast that had once terrorized the galaxy, the deaths of millions, remained a historical scar. But it had ignited a response that reshaped entire civilizations. Humanity's fleet had become both arbiter and guardian, enforcing consequence while preserving life. Across systems, empires reconsidered their strategies, treaties were rewritten, and expansionist ambitions tempered, all in recognition of a species whose intelligence, foresight, and moral clarity could not be matched, and yet, humanity did not linger for recognition. The battleship withdrew quietly into the void, leaving worlds restored, populations preserved, and a galaxy forever cautious. Its presence remained invisible yet undeniable, a reminder that reckoning need not roar, it can move silently, guided by principle and executed with precision. Reshaping history across the stars, the galaxy itself seemed to breathe differently after humanity's intervention. The echo of a single human battleship's presence stretched across light years, leaving an imprint on civilizations, empires, and the very fabric of interstellar politics. Systems once on the brink of collapse now thrived under the quiet guidance of humanity's principles. Infrastructure rebuilt, communication networks restored, and populations protected, not through fear or domination, but through careful, deliberate stewardship that balanced strategy with ethics. Alien fleets, once arrogantly confident, now advanced with caution, recalculating every maneuver, every offensive plan, every assumption about humanity's reach. Expansionist empires paused, military doctrines were rewritten, and diplomats approached negotiations with newfound care. Humanity had demonstrated that intelligence, foresight, and moral clarity could wield a force greater than sheer firepower, reshaping outcomes across sectors without ever resorting to needless destruction. One battleship had become a symbol of inevitability, a reminder that arrogance invites consequence, and that cruelty can never go unchallenged when principle and calculation govern response. Even distant civilizations, unconnected to the initial conflict, adjusted their strategies. Observers and analysts chronicled the arrival of humanity not as conquerors, but as arbiters, enforcers of balance whose actions combined precision, restraint, and foresight. Every decision made by empires, every deployment of fleets, and every diplomatic maneuver now carried the implicit acknowledgement of a species that could appear without warning, correct injustice with surgical efficiency, and withdraw leaving systems stabilized and lives preserved. The human battleship continued its quiet patrols through contested sectors and uncharted space. Threats were neutralized before they could escalate, resources protected, and infrastructure repaired. Colonies previously abandoned or endangered grew resilient under subtle guidance. Generations born in these systems learned not only survival, but the importance of foresight, ethical decision-making, and intelligence applied with purpose. Humanity had transformed the way civilizations understood power, showing that the greatest force is one guided by principle, capable of enforcing justice while preserving life. Even remnants of hostile forces learned the futility of resistance. Attempts to retaliate were met with precise, calculated countermeasures, engines disabled mid-flight, weapon systems neutralized, command networks severed, all without harming innocents. Humanity's intervention was deliberate, surgical, and moral. It had shown that restraint, when wielded with intelligence, is a weapon as formidable as any fleet. Capable of shaping the galaxy without chaos, and teaching lessons that endure across centuries, the story of the battleship and the 7 million lives that had once been threatened spread across light years, becoming a lasting legend. The galaxy understood that reckoning could arrive silently, inevitably, and with moral clarity, that intelligence tempered by principle could enforce balance more effectively than empires of sheer force. Humanity's fleet, though unseen by most, had become an invisible arbiter of justice, a quiet sentinel ensuring that cruelty, arrogance, and recklessness could never dictate the fate of civilizations. Centuries later, systems remembered. Colonies thrived. Civilizations adapted. The galaxy had been reshaped not through overwhelming firepower, but through precision, foresight, and moral clarity. Humanity had proven that the most enduring power is one that preserves life, enforces consequence, and acts with inevitability.